goal setting requires thoughtfulness, a lot of mindfulness. You need to slow down to do it, but it's even harder to achieve them. And one of the reasons why many people don't achieve their goals is because of the things that get in the way that they didn't anticipate. Every year I do planning, and I start out with my 3-year vision, and it's been a great experience to do that. And of course, that develops into more very specific goals over a 3-year period. And my hope is that whatever you did, the work that you did today, you take it with you and you don't stop looking at it. We'll talk about that toward the end, but I think it's important to to revisit, to get more specific, and continue to work on this. All right, so it's not easy to set goals because we're just talking about, you start with a vision, then you have to get very specific, then you have to put action steps to it. But it might even be harder. Goal setting requires thoughtfulness, a lot of mindfulness. You need to slow down to do it, but it's even harder to achieve them. And one of the reasons why many people don't achieve their goals is because of the things that get in the way that they didn't anticipate. So we're going to look at some of those things. But since this event is about financial leadership, I do want to talk to you about some of the financial obstacles or the conundra, items that complicate or can cloud your financial vision. And I put a name to these. I call them the 5 financial facers. You might ask, what is a facer? Because I didn't know that word either. And what happened was, it was going to be the 5 financial conundra, and I wanted 3 F's. So I happened to look up synonyms for conundra, and it was facers. So a facer is a conundra. It's something that is cloudy in your thinking, that gets in the way of where you want to go. So it's sort of perfect for this situation. So I have kind of identified 5 of the common ones that I see in talking to people. The first one is the complexity of success. Now, so as you reach, and everybody on this call are high performers, so you've all reached certain levels of success in your life and or your business and or your career, and your life becomes more complicated. More responsibility, more relationships to be in. If you think about it, you have a business, you have employees, you have clients, you have top relationships, you might have centers of influence or referral sources. All those are relationships that you need to be in and manage. And there become more variables to accommodate. And what happens is, as more comes into our lives, we have less bandwidth, because we have probably somewhat limited bandwidth in which to deal with things. And it limits your ability sometimes to see the big picture, what's happening personally, business-wise, health-wise, and of course, financially. So success also may have had you have the opportunity to have more people in your life to do some of the things that you used to do. So for instance, one of the reasons I don't really know how to work computers all that well is because I haven't done that really on any consistent basis in business for 30 years. I had an old IBM, slow horse when I started, and really haven't done it in a long time. So you get further removed from those things. During this period when I've been at home and I've had to do more, I've realized that certain aspects of being directly on the computer that I enjoy, and doing things myself. So one of the things that happens is you may feel changed to certain, and it made me realize I was a little bit like debilitated when it came to using computers and doing certain things. And now I feel a bit more freedom because of the fact that I can do that. So you might feel chained to certain aspects of your life and removed from others. Does any of this sound familiar to you? As you get more successful, that things get more complex. The next financial facer is the financial attic. Have you ever had the feeling that you've accumulated a lot of stuff over your lifetime? You're not quite sure where they all are or where they belong in terms of financial I'm talking about. So you might have, for many years I had savings bonds still from when I was a child and a young adult that were just kind of laying around, and I didn't know what's happening with them. I have some individual certificates, bonds, things like that. You have lots of documents, lots of business documents, lots of personal documents, deeds to real estate, things like that. And a lot of times you even forget why some of these things were created and how they came about. So then the question is, are they still working for you are your assets working for you to their full potential? Do they complement your plans, your goals, your objectives? Are they still appropriate at this stage of life? And what are your plans for their disposition? So that's the financial addict. The next one is the exit strategy. Now, if you own a business, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't own a business, you may not refer to it this way, but you have the same issue. You know, everyone that's a high performer during their lifetime is creating value, as I mentioned before. And let's say you're a, COO of a company and you have created a lot of intellectual capital. You may have some financial value there. You may have, deferred compensation or golden handcuffs or special things that happen when you're about to, retire or move out of that job. Or it might be that you have intellectual capital that you can continue to use and to sell. You might become a consultant. A lot of people, several people that were on the call last night are in the consulting phase of their lives. So at some point you start to think about, when I go, what am I going to do with this information and the accomplishments that I built to this time? Am I going to monetize them in the form of a sale? Am I going to liquidate them for value? Am I going to transfer business assets to somebody? And then how do your goals and what you plan for the future shape into this mix? So what happens is the evolution and orchestration of an exit strategy doesn't happen by accident. It has to be a deliberate strategy. And recent times obviously have shown that the value of a business concern can change like that, in a nanosecond. So, and then what happens to this? What happens when you start to lose your desire for what you're doing? I've talked to a lot of people, they say, I used to be excited, I'm not so excited about it, might be time to move on. And who takes over for you? What crucial information needs to be passed on to protect business value? So all of those things come into play. The next one is called the what ifs in life. And just a little background on where I got that expression. For many years, we're affiliated with broker dealers in our business. And for many years, I was with one called New England Securities that was bought by MetLife. And, it was a little embarrassing at first because MetLife was the Snoopy company. We were in the business marketplace, high end of the marketplace, and, had kind of sophisticated branding. And all of a sudden now we're represented by cartoons. So I downplayed that for a long time. But then there was a period not too long. MetLife is really out of that business today. They're out of the retail life insurance and investment businesses today. And they, but before they got out, they had this ad campaign, which I thought was brilliant. It was the best thing they ever did. And it was TV ads, and it said, for the what ifs in life. And MetLife was lit up, but the IF were lit up in a different color. So it was all about the ifs in life. This meant a lot to me, and I thought a lot about this because of my family story, which I'll tell you the very quick version, but it's in the book, The Fiscal Therapy Solution, that I mentioned before. I was a senior in high school, and my father got a call that his business, which was the greeting card wholesale business, was burning to the ground. So we rushed about the 15-minute drive to get to his warehouse, and all we saw was smoke, because at that point the fire had been put out. The firemen were there. They had hoses going into there, but he knew that everything was destroyed because his inventory is greeting cards. So it's destroyed by water and smoke, what wasn't destroyed by fire. So as he's standing there and talking to me, maybe my whole family was there, but I just distinctly remember the conversation he was having with me about the fact that he had meant to review his property casualty insurance, and he never quite got to it. And he knew that this was going to complicate his life. And as it turns out, he was way underinsured, and he had a choice to make. And I saw my father, who was always inspired, who was getting to the point where he could now no longer work 7 days a week, could take some time off, enjoy life. He was 55, I think, at the time. And he basically said, initially, he said, I think I'm gonna hang it up. And he was offered a job in the greeting card business in some kind of management position to go to Kansas City. And when he told me about that, I don't remember the rest of the family's reaction, but I was a senior in high school, and I said, well, Pop, I ain't going, because, I had important things like a girlfriend and a band and was starting college the next year, which changed because I decided I wasn't going to go where I was going to go because I knew the family couldn't afford it at that point. I don't know if that impacted ultimately his decision or not, but his brother then died within a month or two of that. So another like thing that comes out of the blue. And of course, he's looking at his own mortality. And it worked in sort of the reverse that you might think it worked. He took a deep look again and decided he wasn't going to give up, that he needed to basically figure out the numbers, triple the size of his business to recoup his losses and to get ahead. So he did that. It took several years of really hard work again, but he built the business back up. In fact, built it big enough that my brother was able to eventually take it over. We never thought it was a business that would stay in the family. We didn't think it was significant enough. But my brother did do that. My brother worked it for many years till he sold it a few years ago and still works for the company that he sold it to. So, that taught me a lot about the what ifs in life, so much so that for those of you who have read the book and saw our version of the financial hierarchy of needs, I call it the pyramid, which is represented on the slide with the logo, it starts at the bottom of the pyramid with protection, and it goes to savings and debt, growth, income, and legacy. And the reason the foundation is protection is because things like that happen. Obviously, that was much more detrimental to him than a very bad year in the stock market could have been, as an example. Everyone always thinks that's the worst thing that can happen. That's not the worst thing that can happen. I lived through it. Next is the legacy conundrum. We talked a little bit about this, but how will you access your assets during your days when you need to access the money and financial assets that you've built during your lifetime? How do you make sure that they won't deplete or be depreciated? There's a book out there called Die Broke. And if you can time it perfectly, you can make your money stretch to the last day, not have to worry about leaving anything, and that's the end of it. Of course, most people would like to live longer than life expectancy. And should that happen, then you have no more money. So it behooves you to have extra money. And if you die on time, or if your assets continue to grow, which often happens, what do you want to have happen to those assets? Do they go to your children? Most cases, people would say yes. Do they go to your grandchildren? Perhaps. Do they go to other people in your life? Maybe. Does it go to philanthropy? Do you have more than enough? I will just tell you that and I'm probably not the wealthiest person that's on this call, but I've looked at it a lot, and I've said that, my kids, there's so much they can get that won't cause them to be unproductive in life. So there's a limit on how much they get. And along with that goes the responsibility to manage a family foundation, which is established, that would give money to philanthropy. And I've mentioned some specific causes that are of interest to us. So they understand that that's what's going to happen. When they get money, they're going to get some responsibility to give back along with that. The next exercise is going to have you look at these financial facers. Number one, and I'm going to ask you to rank them 1, 2, and 3. And I'm also going to ask you to go back to your 3-year vision and identify other obstacles that can get in the way. These are in the form of dangers. What kind of things could happen that could affect you getting there? And then also on the positive side, what opportunities do you have to combat those dangers? And lastly, what strengths do you possess in support of your vision?